that we're going to be looking at a little bit later and kind of how the drums are set up. This here depicts the hi-hat. Now, each one of the drums has one input. So that would be for the snare, all the toms, and of course the floor have one input. But the cymbals and the hi-hat, they all have two inputs, just like this one here. Now, early on when we got the drums, we had some issues with crackling and some of the sounds not coming through. They are little 1/4-inch jacks, and they are held in by one nut. And if that nut comes loose, it tends to wiggle in there. And if you're hearing intermittent sounds, it's probably the first place you want to go look is on the control jack. Now, on the hi-hat, the round piece that's at the bottom, and we can show you that a little bit later, that's the one that controls the opening and closing sounds of the hi-hat. And the other one is basically just the trigger for the top of the hi-hat. And once again, you can just see where those little 1/4-inch lines go in. There's a little nut there. So that's kind of the first place you'd want to look to make sure that if you're having intermittent sound, you can check those out. All right, next slide. Now, just a quick one here is the hi-hat adjustments. For each drummer, it'll be their own preference how they want to set that up. This just depicts basically that there is that one adjustment on the entire drum set. Compared to that one, there's one adjustment, and there it is, to open and close that manually. Okay, next one. Okay, I did notice that sometimes we were having some issues with some of the sound. People are hitting something and nothing's coming, mostly on the cymbals, and the hi-hat as well. So if you look at this depiction here, this is something I did last night, kind of half asleep, so it's not exactly to scale or to model, but you get a rough idea of a cymbal, and in the middle is called the crown, and of course the outside, we call that the bow, and you can get a bow shot, I guess, from that, and then it's the edge. So those three zones, all right, on the large ride there is where you can get sound generated from striking it. Now the edge is one trigger zone, the bow is another trigger zone, and of course the crown, again, up at the top is a trigger zone. But you see the triangle sitting there? That is the only area on the cymbal that you can actually generate sound. So you see how it says Roland up at the top there? That has to be facing away from you. Otherwise, if it's turned around and you're hitting Roland in the head, you're not getting any sound. So we kind of have that every now and again with the hi-hat because it tends to want to spin. And of course, people are like, how come there's no sound coming out of your hi-hat? Well, because you're whacking Roland in the head. So this is a three-way, and the large cymbal that we bought is the only one that is a three-way. So you get the crown, the bow, and the edge shot. Okay? So, buddy, next slide. This is a two-way, so all the rest of the cymbals, including the hi-hat, have only a two-way or a two-zone striking area. So there's two triggers. There's the edge, and then there's the bow shot. Okay, once again, make sure Roland is away from you when you're doing this. Now, each one of these cymbals has a connection, and it has a V-groove in the center of it, so it can't spin. So you can either have it 180 out, or it's perfect. So you shouldn't have any problems with that, mostly with the hi-hat, right? Okay, let's go to the next one. Now we'll talk about the pad triggers. All of the ones, including the bass one, have a rim trigger. So you can add a sound. Most of you will probably be familiar with a rim shot or a rim clap. Now, most of the snares come with that as a basic setup, and it's not the same traditional way you would normally do a rim shot. You're just doing a rim shot where you'd lay your drumstick on the skin itself or the head and then try and shoot it off to the side. You actually have to put your drumstick across the entire rim and then make your rim shot. So I left a page at the back there with the instructions on it in the manual form. So once again, there's the head trigger, so that's the nylon pad itself. Now at this point, I'd like to say that if you're going to play the drum kit at any time, this is for all the drummers and anybody who comes up here, use fresh sticks, okay? So clean, brand new sticks, and the reason why we want to use those is anything that has burrs or cuts or scrapes on it will cut this mesh, okay? We'll tear it, and then we'll have to replace it. And they're not exactly cheap. They're around the $50 mark. So we're expecting never to replace these, but if we do, it's around the $50 mark. So please use fresh sticks that don't have any burrs on them whatsoever. So if you have your own kit at home and you bang away on it, don't bring those sticks. I bought a brand new pair just for this, and they should last forever, for me anyway. Okay, the other thing that should be noted here is that the Roland kit has an expressive component to it. So what that means is you can play it soft and you can play it harder to make it louder, okay? So what we're going to try to do today too is that we'll set the drum set up, because I noticed there was a couple times when I was playing, and you made the same comment, Terry, a couple times where you want to feed off of what the drummer is doing for sound. And with the acoustic set, you can kind of hear things building and people getting into the music and trying to maybe get to that expression point where you want to be a little bit more forceful in your play, to bring the volume up so that if you're playing a chorus and it's really calls for that, then you can do that. Now, with the electric drums, it's very difficult to do that, and I mean not from the perspective of playing harder, but being able to get that feedback to the rest of the group and even to the audience. It's very difficult to do that. So what we're trying to do tonight, hopefully, is to set the levels so that when we do play at a higher level, you can kind of feel that come through but not overwhelm anything. So that will be one of our goals tonight, is to set up the sound so that we do get some expression out of playing the drums, right? Where, you know, if you want to play soft in a particular type of music, that the entire volume of the drum set, right, coincides with how the sound is being presented out in the sound, like in the auditorium, but that if you want to accentuate, and the capability is there with the drum set, if you want to accentuate, then you can certainly do that. And it's not flat. And other people, like, I know on my team, Joe's like, I'm always trying to feed off the drummer. But now he's like, I can't do that. I want to drive, I want to play my guitar in a song, and he's like, I can't hear you, or I'm overplaying you, or so we'll hopefully be able to kind of address some of that stuff tonight. Okay, buddy, next slide. All right, so once again, this is basically focused towards the drummers. Right now, I've got it set up on number 50 is the Maple kit. And it says here, basically, you can edit that, and I'm sure some of you guys have gone through there and explored how to edit some of the sounds that are on there. So maybe later on, once we get kind of comfortable with the drum set, if each particular drummer wants to make his own kit, then we can certainly do that. Mike's kind of here to facilitate that for this evening so that we can kind of look at what are the parameters we need to have if we're going to set up our own set, and that we're not overpowering the soundboard by setting up our own set. Because each individual, and if you look at the back, the last 2 pages in the book, I mean, there's 500 different sounds that this drum set can generate, and each one of those has a different level. So one snare drum compared to another will have a different level and a different sound. So the biggest challenge will be, right, managing that at the soundboard, okay? So some of the not so familiar sound people might have a difficult time with that. So what we're trying to do is we'll set up one kit tonight and have one EQ setting. And if we want to go from there to set up another kit, like Pete, if you want your own kit, right, we can certainly go about that same way using the parameters we learned here tonight, and then running the same sort of EQ settings all the time for that kit, so that when you come here and you set your kit up, that the EQ settings are there and you never have to change them, and we're not overpowering the board, or we're not, you know, changing those on the fly, because, I mean, yeah, that'll be the tough part, is from the sound perspective, if we're switching kits back and forth all the time. Each one of those has its own default levels, And I'd hate to say it, but we don't want to A, blow the system, and B, send the crowd running from what you've just done, okay? So we'll quickly go through how to just do a quick setup to change any particular sound on here. Now, on the drum set, we have an extra cymbal, and we're just going to use that cymbal in the maple kit, and I encourage the rest of you guys to do that. The middle cymbal that's there, if you want to add a sequence or a different sound, use that. So I think it was Christmas time, we used a triangle, right? So that would be an example to use that one rather than the other ones, and you can use whatever sound you want on there, okay? Okay, next slide, buddy. So in order to do that, you look over here, the V-drum has basically a button that says instrument, so short for INST, okay? To edit any of the V-drum trigger sounds, press this button and then strike whichever one you want to change, okay? So we talked about the trigger points earlier. So the edge of a two-way, or the bow of a two-way, or the three-way, you can do that as well. I suggest, just for simplicity's sake, don't do that, because it's going to really make a mess of things when you go to play something and you forgot to change that. You go to do a strike somewhere and you forgot to change it, and you hear a cowbell or a moo or a peg during a performance. That would probably be comical, but confusing. So anyway, you press this button, you hit whatever trigger, and I'm going to encourage you guys to just use that center one for now. You hit that one, and then what happens is, go to the next slide there, buddy. You see here, this is what will show up right here. It says from E-Edit, select F2 or Edit. So it doesn't show up very well there as F2, but you drummers probably have seen that already, but you just hit Edit, and then basically what will come up after you see this 14-inch hi-hat. Now, in this example is just I struck the hi-hat, and that's what showed up. Okay, go to the next slide. So the capabilities are this. To change the size of the hi-hat, or even the snare or the toms, you can customize each one of these as being your own, if you like. So what I've done, actually, is when we first got the drum kit, I set that maple kit up to sound somewhat similar to that one. Okay? So there wasn't a big surprise to everybody that we had an electric kit. So it says here basically, yeah, to change the size, press F1 and scroll for your desired size. So if you like a big 18-inch crash, then you would hit the crash, and you can change it from 16 to 18. And if you want to add tambourine, and you can see here that there is a tambourine tag, and if you hit that button, it puts a tambourine on top. So it sounds like you're hitting a tambourine and the hi-hat at the same time. Now you can set it to fixed, which is the next one, so that it's closed completely, and you don't have to worry about opening and closing it. And then you can set up or edit the mic position. So the mic position is basically, I think there's 3 or 4 settings for the mic position, where inside, outside, above, and just beside. And all of the triggers, sorry, all of the effects will have that, where you can move the drum mic in and out. And even in the bass. So if you were to strike the bass and go to that, you can move the mic back and forth to mimic whether or not you have the mic inside or you have the mic outside. That's kind of more along the preference area. So once again, if you are going to do this, you've got to be very cognizant with your sound guy that you are changing that and you're making different sound, and different frequencies will be coming out of there. So double pedal application in the fixed position. And then the tambourine also from that screen. Okay, next one, buddy. Now these are just some of the examples of what we can do, and I'm not going to go through all of them. You can explore that on your own. You can change the shell material of each single one of basically the toms, the snares, whatever you want. You can change the shell material, so maple, birch, I think there's even aluminum in there. Aluminum, brass, whatever you want, you can do that. So you can see here at the top left-hand corner, you can see shell, and then what type of material it is and how deep you want it. So that'll go back to the whole preference. As for now, we're just having the maple kit set up, and we'll kind of deal with that a little later.